All right, we're out here today crushing some rock with our Chinese rock crusher mounted in the back of the world's best dancing S10. Oh man, this should be fun. Exhausting, but fun. If you've been following the channel for a while, it's not the first time you've seen this old girl, which doesn't actually have a nickname yet, but probably should have one. This is a Chinese rock crusher. I actually got it off of eBay, of all things. I did not get this one from Baker Mountain Mining and Metals, though they do sell them, and they sell very similar, if not identical ones to this. And certainly if you were going to get one and you didn't want to think around with the nightmare of importing something like this from China, Baker Mountain Mining and Metals might be your way to go. I originally was talking with them about it. All in, as delivered, not counting the truck and all the rest, I'm in this thing about $4 grand, maybe 4,300. So I'm less than half of what it would be to buy one domestically here in the States. The quality control has been about as poor as you would expect. Found out that the keyways of the shaft on the pulleys are two different sizes. So the keyway in the shaft is larger than the keyway in the pulleys, and in order to make it all work, this is pretty tricky, they hammered in a damn keyway and a nail. So we pulled those out when this shocker came loose on us right at the very beginning, and Dad custom milled some keyways in order to make them fit. Other than that, we converted the machine over to grease from oil. The bearings were supposed to be oiled instead of greased. No thank you. Which just required, cutting some new threads for it. And pumping that entire center section full of grease, which, well, it's a lot of grease, and it goes everywhere. As it sits here in the truck, I will say the belts in this video are still too loose, and tightening the belts dramatically increased the size and speed of which it could crush. But I was still running her a little light because I don't want to break it. The unit will crush, like 14 by 8. So it's a decent size little miniature crusher, so to speak. They call it a jaw crusher, as the jaws themselves open and close. That back jaw moves in and down, thus pulling the rocks and tightening them up. And it's sort of like a wedge. The plates are supposed to be reversible. As you might have seen in an earlier video, the back plate does not work flipped upside down and will require a substantial amount of cutting and grinding in order to do so. I haven't tried to flip around the front jaw. The clamps that hold the front jaw, we had to regrind them in order to get it to stay tight. It's not completely clear to me why these crushers will self-destruct if they aren't super tight, but apparently they'll self-destruct if they're not super tight. But I put it on the grinder and reshaped the wedges, and it seems to be working fine. So this is showing the rocks dumping out from underneath the S10. There's a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas. I wish it was taller, so I didn't have to mess around with it as much. But then I'd have to lift the rocks higher. I wish the truck didn't run like crap. but then I might have had to pay for it. So there's really, it just is what it is. That bounce you can see is in the solid rubber mounts we have on the rear axle. Despite its crazy, crazy look, we can't see a single bit of flex coming from the frame. It appears to all be cab mounts. And yeah, it's absolutely shaking the truck to death. The other day, I found that the door locks had shake themselves on one side, which ought to make getting into the truck pretty exciting here one of these days, because the only set of keys I have for it are in it. This is actually my mother-in-law's old S10, a fitting end for a useless two-wheel drive vehicle up here in the mountains of Montana. So why'd I end up with a rock crusher? Well, I own this rock quarry that we're slowly turning into a place that we can build a house. It's got a lot of rock, and I need a use for it. And quite frankly, the color of this rock is out of style, so it doesn't have a whole lot of resale value that way. And I thought that being able to convert it into something useful would be awesome, rather than just pushing it around and stacking it forever in piles. I also kind of half flirted with the idea that I might be able to, once we're all done here, assuming it all still runs, do a little local crushing for farmers that might have big piles of rocks in their field that they've picked out, or who knows what. This is a nice top-down view. Look at that precision rack I've made. If you look in the background of some of the videos, you'll watch rocks come out of the jaw crusher and slam off of that. They actually have hit it hard enough to put dents in the top of it. Some of this rock is surprisingly hard. I know it might look like your classic siltstone, but we're talking crap that rings like glass as it rolls off the mountain. It is earth-shakingly hard, and occasionally the machine will just take one crunch at it and launch the thing up into the ceiling. So if you're watching this, it's quite likely you're kind of curious about getting one yourself. Has it paid for itself? I don't know. Certainly not yet. Will it? Probably eventually. You gotta figure that sitting here in the United States, it's worth, as you see it, at least twice what I paid for it. I've even flirted with the idea of doing a dealership thing, though. That's just not what I do for a living, and it's not what I have an interest in. I don't know how long after this video is posted that you're watching it, but it's quite likely I'm still on the channel. So if you are looking for one yourself, or you want tips on how to import the gosh darn things, or you got tips on how to keep that Chinese diesel motor chugging and a purring, it always makes you nervous when they include a spare head gasket and no other parts. So yeah, sure, I'd love to hear it. So far, I've been quite pleased. Yeah, there's some little crap, and cutting other keyways would be quite difficult for most folks, but you could have gone to a machine shop, and they wouldn't have been that much to have two keyways cut. I would, if you've got one, pull those plates off of either wheel and have a look, because that would have eaten it alive, and had it destroyed it, we would not be having this conversation. So far, she's been a good little machine, and I have crushed, probably less than 15 yards, but we're getting up there. Eventually, it might even pay for itself. So here's a little look under the skirts, down into the belly of the beast, and you can see the actual crushing action and the jaw plates themselves. I suspect with the worry of them coming loose is that one jaw will vibrate over and you'll end up with the ribs connecting, at which point I think the world might stop turning in a giant ball of flame. This will show you some of that hard rock dancing around a little bit. I took a bit of a risk sticking the camera in there to have a look, but I thought you'd enjoy seeing it.